Hello and welcome to Climate Check. Thank you so much for making time. My name is Mary Mwekisa. Now, this program is brought to you courtesy HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners under the VCA project. And this is the Voices for Just Climate Action project. And of course, the program is designed to create discourse around climate action, climate resilience, climate mitigation, and adaptation. And so today's program is a very interesting one. And of course, we'll be discussing various issues. But before we delve into what's coming on the show, let's take a break. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. Welcome back to Climate Check. Now, we start off by bringing to you this clip, which focuses on the Lusaka City Region Food System Multi-Stakeholder Dialogue that was held by HIVOS Southern Africa and its cooperating partners right here in Lusaka. And also at this event, the Lusaka Mayor, Her Worship Chilando Chitangala, was present. There was also Chongwe Mayor and various other stakeholders from various municipalities from across the country. Let's find out what happened at this engagement.
The impacts of climate change, including unpredictable weather patterns and reduced agricultural productivity, has worsened the problem and impacted agriculture, thereby affecting food security. To address this, there has been a need to develop resilient, dynamic, and sustainable systems capable of meeting the rising demand while ensuring food security in the face of environmental stresses. Lusaka Mayor Chilando Chitangala has called for establishment of resilient and sustainable food systems to meet the city's rising food demand driven by a growing population. She was speaking at the Lusaka City Region Food System Multi-Stakeholder Dialogue held at Sunday's Creation recently.
Collaboration and coordination among stakeholders and sustainable urban agriculture practices, the development of robust policies and community empowerment are key to ensuring food security and improving the quality of life for all our residents. The Lusaka City Council is committed in establishing a dedicated food system office. This office will spearhead our efforts in the transforming of food systems in the city. We call upon various stakeholders, including HIVOS and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, to support the establishment of this office. Your partnership and support are crucial in making this vision a reality.
We are dealing with production, and the production space is changing, and changing in many, many ways. One, it is driven by effects of climate change. Two, we're dealing with the shrinkage of space. I think there was a question, on the table with regards to what's happening with Chongwe. So we have shrinkage. Land is being converted from agriculture to mixed use, commercial, residential, and other uses. And obviously we're taking away space from agriculture. What that means, therefore, is that we don't have to necessarily run to other places to look for, and maybe we can change the way we're going to do things.
Organizers of the dialogue, HIVOS Southern Africa, called for collective efforts in order to achieve sustainable food security.
And I think from the various projects that HIVOS has done, as I will show, what we see as the major missing link is really the role of the local authority. And we know that the local authority is doing so much. We know that there's so many projects that are happening on food systems, but we are working with different people. So we are not connecting the dots, and so we are not taking advantage of this opportunity.
Through this project, we realized that in most of the initiatives that exist, it was targeting more the farmers, the producers, and the voice of the young people was a bit absent from the policy space, from coming up with innovative solutions, moving into the tech-forward century, and lastly, looking at how these green enterprises that we need to strengthen can help us get our city to the next level. And this project is happening in 10 cities, 3 regions, Latin America, Southern Africa, and Indonesia.
Other stakeholders who participated at the meeting focused on the dynamics of the food preservation and sustainable food storage.
People talk about inclusivity, but does it really matter? I think from the YAPRI point of view, we say yes, absolutely so. It does, because what is a food system if it cannot even make the most vulnerable also be able to access food at an affordable or tolerable price? So we think we need a system which involves a wide range of stakeholders, particularly our marginalized communities, smallholder farmers, youths, women, leading more equitable access to these food resources, knowledge, and opportunities which a food system can spawn. Inclusivity, then, it must have aspects of equitable access, food diversity, cultural relevance, economic opportunities, sustainable practices, fostering healthier communities.
The event, organized by HIVOS and other partners, brought together key stakeholders and various city officials to discuss strategies for building resilient food system. Zakaria Nyimbili for Climate Check.
This is Climate Check. Up next, I will be talking to the country director for WWF Zambia. This is Ms. Nalucha Ziba. And of course, in this interview, we talk about women's involvement in climate action, the support they are receiving from the organization, as well as generally the welfare of women in response to various climatic changes in their communities. Listen to this conversation. Thank you so much for making time to be on the show.
Thank you, Mary, for inviting me.
The first time I spoke to you on this show was via phone.
Yes.
You were attending a CASA event in Livingston, I think.
Yes.
So at least now we're together in studio. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me first pick your mind on, because I know that you're also a partner on the VCA project, how it's faring and what is your input into this project, very briefly.
Okay, as WWF, we're one of the member organizations in the implementing the Voices for Climate Action. Mm-hmm. And in terms of how we are faring, we are quite doing well in the sense that we have quite a number of partners, community partners that we have identified and working with that are implementing various interventions. Some of them are implementing interventions around nature-based solutions, around water solutions. Others are looking at nature-based solutions around forestry, whilst others are also looking at how do they support and build the voices of young people in terms of conservation. Okay.
And now we're focusing on gender and climate action. Generally, from your assessment, how involved are women in various projects in this country that are to do with climate action?
So when you're looking at the involvement of women in projects and programs to do with climate action, I would say that in terms of the level of involvement, it's I will look at it at different levels. So if you look at the design stage, usually when the programs or projects are being designed, there's very little consultations, which is done with the actual recipients of those programs in terms of the communities. Even though we have guidelines such as the free prior informed consent, which we're supposed to be using as a standard globally when it comes to involving and ensuring that we safeguard the rights of community members. Therefore, that's also one of the frameworks which should be used in terms of involving women in the design of climate programs and projects. But what has been happening is that it has been more of a top-down, but even when it's a top-down, when the programs are designed as gender interventions, they are mainly construed to be involving women only without realizing that, for for you to achieve gender gains, you also need to have male involvement and male buy-in.
Okay. I think I needed to first understand the mandate of the organization so that even as we continue with the conversation, we can understand how some of these things are linked to WWF Zambia. What is the reason you exist in this country?
Okay, so WWF Zambia is belongs to a network of WWF International, which is one of the world's leading independent conservation NGOs, working in over 100 countries.
Okay.
And our mission is to ensure that we stop the environmental degradation, but also we foster a world in which people live in harmony with nature. So basically, really, that's what we do. And in Zambia, we have been in existence since 1962. And in terms of delivering our mission and mandate, we have been doing it through the various pillars of our work, such as energy, fresh water, wildlife, as well as forestry and people. And working with people, this is where we are implementing a number of projects where we also ensure that we mainstream gender as well as issues to do with disability and youth.
Okay. Now let's get back to our conversation on gender. Zambia experienced a major drought in 40 years this year, and I should believe the impact is one that is there for everyone to see. How are women mostly impacted by this drought? And if you like, you could also add on how men are impacted.
Okay. So when you look at the drought, yes, it has impacted everyone, both genders, men, women, as well as young, old. But when you are looking at it from a gender lens, it tends to give a disproportionately in terms of how it affects women, in the sense that we know that women play the role of caregivers,
yes,
but they also play the reproductive roles as well as mainly looking after the homes. So what that has done is that it has necessitated or increased their vulnerabilities and burdens. For instance, if you go to most rural areas, even here in urban areas, we are currently suffering from a water scarcity.
Yes.
But when you check most of the queues, even when you drive around, it's the women who are drawing water.
Oh, yes.
So what that has done is that it has increased on their burden of work in terms of the long hours they have to search for water to be able to provide and fend for their families, which then removes them from participating in terms of some of the economic activities of the country, such that if, for instance, I'm running a store at a market, I'll first have to look for water and ensure that I've made that provision for my children. By the time I'll be getting to open my store or start selling at the market, I would have lost a good 4 to 5 hours in terms of looking for water and water provision. Hence, that's where even our interventions become very key when we are getting everybody to ensure that nature becomes everybody's business when we are talking about conservation, because we have learned and we are learning the very hard way in terms of if we degrade our environment and we don't look after it, these are some of the effects. But then in the long term, how do we build and stop and avert such a degradation so that we also don't see the loss of water? So that's part of the interventions that we are doing and championing as an institution. For instance, under the forestry sector, we are ensuring that we are partnering with communities and creating village action groups, which then later on translate to CFMGs, and these are looking at how they're doing forestry regeneration, but also assisted regeneration, and especially farm assisted regeneration, and ensuring that a number of forests are put under community protection. And in doing so, then the communities have an ownership, but also they have an ownership in the sense that they are able to conserve those forestry as well as ensure that they're able to draw their livelihoods from there.
Okay. And how involved are men and women in climate action? And by this I mean for policymakers, policy implementers, how much of women are bringing to the table, especially in rural areas? How much of the men are bringing to the table? Because there's a feeling that women are usually not involved in some of these activities, or even just participating in meetings and so on and so forth.
I would say that the level of involvement for women, the involvement is there, but sometimes it tends to be very low, on the lower side. That's why we have some actions which tend to miss. I'll give an example. if you look at certain sectors like the energy sector, you find that a lot of the players you find on the table are sort of men.
Yes.
Then when you look at issues to do with financial, social inclusion,
Yes.
if you look at it, you find that it's more tilted. You will have a lot of players around there. It's more of a male-dominated kind of field. So if you look at the involvement of women, it's very low. But also, there are processes such as integration of gender, social inclusion methodologies in programming. Like, for instance, that's what we are doing as an institution, where we are bringing in the key voices of women, not just bringing in their voice, but also building their agency in terms of how they take part in conservation projects. So we have quite a number of projects that are supporting women, even as a response to the drought. For instance, we are supporting the creation and formation of small farmer cluster farming blocks,
Okay.
which then are smallholder at a very household level, which are then supporting women's participation. But we're also seeing young people in there, as well as persons living with a disability. So for us, it's one way of empowering women and ensuring that we support and contribute to building resilient livelihoods at household level. But at the same time, we are doing so in areas which are near protected areas, where we are also trying to address issues of human-wildlife conflict, because at the end of the day, you find that, like I said earlier, it's women who are involved in most of the household chores.
Yes.
So as they are going to draw water, and as animals are also pressured in terms of wildlife, they are looking for water. So they are leaving their designated areas and venturing into human settlements, and in
Yes.
there creating a number of conflicts. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But also ensuring that we have women's voices and participation. We are running trainings around human-wildlife conflict,
Okay.
where the trainings are involving communities, but we have ensured that we have done a gender disaggregation by ensuring the participation of women and men in those trainings. We recently did some in Sesheke and Sioma, and where we are training them in terms of being able to make chili blockers to try and address issues of human-wildlife conflict.
Oh, okay. And what role do women play in climate mitigation and adaptation in this country?
So women play a vast number of roles. One of them is that they are conservers of the nature and the
Yes.
environment, in the sense that they are the ones who are usually at the first point of interaction with the nature, and therefore they're also at the center of conservation. So in some of the communities that we work, for instance, we are supporting the restoration of the Songwe River,
Okay.
and you find that we are supporting the building of check dams in those communities, and women are involved using nature-based solutions as part of the climate adaptation projects that we have, that is supported by ISTD and Global Affairs Canada. So you find that women are also playing a role in there, in the sense that they're also being supported with small nurseries, which they're able to grow some of the indigenous trees that will be able to be used as part of the long-term conservation. So we are supporting them in terms of coming up with the nurseries and doing the preparations. So yes, women are involved and integrated. And also some of the work that we have done under the same climate adaptation program is that we have been doing gender trainings, JC
Okay.
trainings, and we have created gender champions, where we have more than 50 women who have been trained across the CAPA implementation areas in Western Province, but not leaving out the men as well. We have also trained men as gender champions, as we know that they're very good allies.
I was actually going to ask about knowledge exchange, knowledge sharing with these women, especially in rural areas where they may want to participate, but they don't have much information on climate action and also what it is that they can do to help the situation. But let's also zero in on some of the major challenges women are facing as a result of climate change in this country.
So some of the challenges that we have noted is that when you are looking at building resilience activities for climate action, you will realize that there's still a number of things that we need to address. Some of them is around ownership, for instance, of land. Due to the patriarchal nature of our country. So you find that even as we are doing conservation interventions, most women, yes, do have access to land, but they don't own it. So they are only limited in terms of how much they can do on those particular pieces of land, even as much as we want them to be involved, let's say, using traditional lands in terms of conserving those, you find that the male lineage tends to be stronger, so it's men who have a say to say, these are the farms or
Yes.
which our grandparents and
Left,
and they
yes.
tend to be passed on along the male lineage as opposed to the women lineage. So such that even when you go in such areas, you're trying to work with communities, you find that the bulk or the major participants in those programs are men. So those are some of the patriarchal and gender differentiated nuances that we tend to come across as we undertaking conservation work. But all in all, in terms of our work, we try to mainstream JC across and ensure that we put women at the center of the delivery of our work.
And lastly, Country Director, as I let you go, as an organization, how much of women consideration, have you considered in your various projects as an organization? How are you helping women adapt to climate change?
So how we have helped women, I'll give an example. For instance, in line with the human-wildlife conflict, like I mentioned earlier,
Yes.
we are training women in terms of being able to use chili fences,
Yes.
so that they're able to protect themselves as well as their families and their communities as well as their crops. But also we are training women in terms of butterfly farming methodologies,
Okay.
which are looking at more of agroecology conservation as part of the livelihoods component. But in terms of conservation as well, where we do offer support, for instance, to various government ministries.
Okay.
Like we are supporting the Department of National Parks and Wildlife in terms of development of protected areas management plans, and we're ensuring that in those plans we try and see how we can mainstream and include gender in them. So that's how we are supporting women, but also it's not just through training and knowledge enhancement, but it's also participation at various levels, where also they're able to take up a leadership position in the various community groupings and that we are forming, and then they are supported with their leadership skills.
We take a short break. Remember, this program is brought to you by HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners under the VCA project. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. We've come to the end of the program. Do make a date with me next week, same time, same channel, as we continue to each one of us play a role in climate action. I'm your host, Mary Mwekisa. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.